do yourself a favor. If you haven't heard of Windy City Heat, the Big Three podcast, stop podcast right now. Go on to YouTube, watch Windy City Heat, listen to all 100 plus episodes of the podcast on Simply Don the Podcast Network. Once you're done, push play. You're listening to us now. I am with the matriarch of the Big Three Fan Club, Nicole Perez, a.k.a. Susie Hilf. How you doing, Susie?
I'm good. How are you, Garrett?
I'm great. So, Nicole Perez, I gotta know, was that just out of the blue, drew it out of a hat?
Yeah, I wish I had a good story, but I don't.
So, why'd you switch to Susie? Why didn't you just continue the Nicole Perez persona?
You know, when I originally, started interacting with the Big Three on Facebook, I never really expected to make real-life friends from the group.
Right.
So then I just had so many real-life friends from the group, it was kind of weird that half the people knew me as Nicole and the other half knew me as my real name, which is
Right.
Susie.
It was a bombshell.
I'm sorry?
It was a bombshell. I thought that was your real name, like...
Yeah, a lot of people did.
Man.
I'm full of surprises. What
I
can I
guess
say?
so. So let me ask you, how did you get introduced to the Big Three? Was it Windy City Heat? Did you start listening to podcasts?
The first introduction to Windy City Heat I had was, I think, in 2004 on a bootleg VHS copy of Windy City Heat.
Okay.
It was like this weird period where it had aired on Comedy Central, but hadn't been released on DVD yet.
Yeah.
And the only way to see the movie was to have someone who had like taped it off TV.
Yeah.
So my brother actually was the first person to introduce the movie to me, and we actually watched it as a family. So everyone in my family has seen the movie because we all watched it together.
Is your brother in the fan club? Is he a Javaho or?
Well, my brother is definitely still a big fan of the movie.
Yeah.
He thinks my devotion to the project is a little weird.
Oh.
And I think there's a lot of days that he wishes he hadn't introduced me to this movie.
Right.
But, I mean, he's a supporter of Javaho Nation. He's not someone who listens to every single podcast, but he has heard a few, and he definitely, finds the humor in it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a litmus test for people. Like, if they don't think it's funny, then I probably, think different of them. But I have a similar story. Like, I remember seeing, like, the spots on it for Comedy Central. And I was like, I kind of want to watch that movie. Like, I didn't know why, but it just looked funny. And then, we got home late, and we kind of watched it as a family. It was me, my brothers, and my dad. I think my mom watched it too. Probably not. But it could comment on the Adam Carolla scene, and just from there, I thought it was the funniest movie ever. And then I stayed up because they played it again at midnight, and I recorded it, of course. And I thought, how can this movie get any better? And then they played it again with no censors. Like, it was just out of control, and it was the funniest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. And to this day, I still think it's my number one movie.
Yeah.
But so someone who hasn't seen Windy City Heat, like, how, if you can, how would you describe it?
I think it's the rare movie where actually knowing a little bit more about the movie before you watch it is actually helpful.
I would agree, 100%. 100%.
Because when I watched it for the first time, before I watched it, my brother and his wife kind of told me about, a few of the different scenes in the movie. And I think that actually helped me, like, enjoy it more. Because I was one of those people, like, the very first time I watched it, I loved it. I know some people, like, the first time they watch it, they're kind of confused.
Yeah.
And they have to watch it a few times.
Right.
The way it was described to me by my brother's wife, I think, is the perfect way. if it happened to anyone besides Perry, you would feel really bad. But because he's the worst person in the world, it's really funny.
No, it's totally true. And, yeah, completely.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you had set up this movie about a person who's a normal person, you know, with, you know, good points and bad points, you would feel bad for the person.
Oh, yeah.
But Perry, at every opportunity, proves himself to be a despicable person, so you can't help but laugh at, like, the situations he gets himself into.
Absolutely, and I like to call it a chilly movie. That's a Big Three reference. Just because it gets better over time. Like, when you know what's going to happen, like, when you see it for, like, a few times, and then, like, the table scene comes up, or the red bat, blue bat, like, you're just, like, in such anticipation, because you know Perry's going to blow a gasket, and it's, like, the funniest thing you've ever seen, but it's definitely funnier after you watch it. I mean, I've seen it, you know, who knows how many times. But so, speaking of Perry, you know, you kind of already described him. So, like, who is the Big Three?
Well, you have the mastermind of Don Barris, who is a true comedic genius.
Right.
Who is a maestro, who... you know, he's an MC in the finest form. He's the person who makes the wheels turn. He's definitely the person who had the vision to make it happen and created something that lots of people love. Mm-hmm. Then you have Walter Molinsky, who is, I mean, I think he's handsome.
You guys have something going on. Like, it's pretty palpable that you two have something going on, but
you know, more than that, he's very quick-witted, one of the most naturally comedic, gifted persons I can think of. I mean...
He's ridiculously quick. Like...
Yeah.
I remember there was one time where Perry was telling somebody, like, he filled up someone's gas, and Perry's, you know, historically cheap, and within a millisecond... Mo was like, did you give her premium? You know, it's like stuff like that. It's just like so quick. Like, he is definitely a genius. But so then we talked about Mo. We talked about Don Barris. What about the creme de la creme, Perry Caravello?
Perry is, you know, he is a despicable person. He's got no redeeming characteristics that I can think of. He is entitled, he is lazy, he is self-centered.
Okay.
He's gross, just on a physical level. He belches and he's rude. But in Perry's mind, he is capable of being an A-list actor on par with, like, Tom Cruise. So, if that's not some delusion and not a reason to hate a person, I don't know what would be.
Now, I think you painted him, you know, perfectly. It's hard to describe Perry, but you did a really good job, and you try to explain it to other people. And I think, you know, his money shot is just when he gets really angry, because no human acts like Perry. No human being, like screeches when they're, like, upset about something or, like, you know, goes that far. But he is one of the fun, like, when he's screaming and all this, like, it's honestly one of the funniest things that, you know, that I like, and I know a lot of other people in the fan club like, but Perry, he's out of control. So after the movie, you know, and they had, you know, lawsuits and this and that and the other thing, then they finally started a podcast. When did you start listening to the podcast?
You know, I actually didn't know about the podcast right away. I found out about the podcast. They had moved from Ace Broadcasting, and they were at Simply Don. Mm-hmm. So I think that was about a year and a half. I know it was right before they had their first event, which was the Randy Callahan. Oh, I don't know if we should say his name. The
Okay.
RC
I mean, listen,
event.
like 25 people listen to this, so.
I know, but still, I was just like, So I know I started listening to it right before they had their first live event for fans.
Do you know what the episode was, or is it just kind of a blur?
I could figure it out, but I don't know off the top of my head. I did start listening right from the beginning.
Okay, just to catch up.
I just plowed through the episodes that they had already produced. I think there were like 40 or so,
okay.
And I just plowed straight through them. So by the time I was caught up, it was right before they were about to have their first live event.
Okay.
And I seriously thought about flying out for it, but I didn't. And after that, I just regretted it so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was an extreme fan of the podcast right from the beginning.
I mean, if you really like Windy City Heat, each podcast is like it's like compact Windy City Heat, but like the jokes are still there. Like, because the first one I listened to was What the Huck. It was like the one they had like on iTunes. And here's the thing, like I had heard about the podcast like years, like I don't know, it was probably like a year before. And you know how they have those promos on YouTube, where but that intro is like 15 seconds long. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, I'm like, this isn't the podcast. And after like 10 seconds, I closed it out, and I didn't even blink an eye until after I came. I just recently moved. I had a lot of time on my hands, and I found out they had the podcast. But like what you said, I plowed through, like I listened to it all day, every day, and it was just the funniest thing I ever heard. And, went from there, and, it was great. The podcast, to me, if you like the movie and you don't like the podcast, I don't know. I mean, I don't know many people that do, but I listen to it every day, like, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you listen to an episode every day or every other day, or, like, what's your usage on the podcast?
It varies. There's been days where I've probably listened to 10 hours of the podcast. And like you're laughing, but I'm probably underestimating.
Right.
But now I don't listen to them every single day just because I've heard them all, dozens of times.
Right.
But I am definitely involved in some sort of big three entertainment, whether it's through Facebook or watching an old video or listening to a podcast every single day.
Got it. Speaking of Facebook, you started maybe the only reason I'm still on Facebook, the Big Three fan page. So what was the motivation behind that, and what do you think now of over thousands of people that have joined?
I actually did not start it.
Whoa, bombshell.
So Steven Stokel is the person who started the fan club.
Okay.
But the first day that he started it, he made myself and Dustin Hedberg admins of the group because
legends of the group. Okay.
Dustin and I had done a lot of fan organizing. We did a couple things where we would try to get like people to tweet about the Big Three and just kind of getting the fans involved.
Yeah.
So Steven, even though he had the idea to start the fan club, he didn't really know all the people online who were fans of the Big Three, where Dustin and I already, like, within the first day of the fan club, we had added like 300 people.
Oh, wow.
Like just people that we had previously interacted with on Facebook. We knew were fans who we knew would be into the content.
Right.
It was a very organic thing. I will say, out of all the people that have helped with the fan club, I think I've consistently kind of been the person who's been most active in the group and has kind of,
No, it's your brag. Keep bragging. Keep bragging about it.
Yeah, no, why should
But no,
I stop
I would agree
bragging now?
though, because you were the one that invited me into the group. Like, I had no idea. Like, I think I posted something on Perry's. Like, I had cut up an episode of like Perry just saying a bunch of gay stuff, and then you sent me a message like, "Hey, there's this group where everyone talks about, you know, the big three and stuff like that," and my world changed. Like, I remember my first rookie move. I didn't know what an exclamation point was. So I posted, "Don't you guys mean exclamation point?" And I got roasted because I was green. You know, I didn't listen to the Ace podcast yet. So, but no, like the club now is great. Like I love the fact that there's so many people in it, and I don't really mind when people repost like old things, just because you know it's people who are excited about the big three. And there was times where that fan club was like down in the dumps. Like, people were saying, "I'm gonna leave, I quit," you know, da 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 da. But I mean, the fan club. I'm on the page right now. Let me go ahead. Oh, I was on the Big Three fan club. See how many fans we have on here. Doesn't say. Do you know how many fans? Oh, it's 1,618 members.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. And I would say out of those 1,600, probably half of them are people that I personally invited to the fan club from seeing them, you know, post on Facebook about the group. So I've definitely gotten some weird responses to some of the messages that I've sent out, where people are like, "Who is this chick? Why is she up in my business? Why is she sending me a friend request?"
Right.
But I think most people have seen that it's just because I want to spread the good word about the big three.
No, and you did a great job, and you know, and like I said, you're one of the main reasons I still have a Facebook. Like, if I wasn't in this group, I probably wouldn't, because you know, there's only so many tasty videos I can watch before I'm just like, yeah, that's probably it. But so we'll go into big three isms that affect your personal life and pop culture. For instance, I cannot drive by a Denny's without thinking about Perry. I cannot drive by a car detail place without thinking about the RC incident. So, like, what affects you on a day? Like, today, was there anything that, like, was a big three-ism that you're like, oh, totally, there it is?
You know, I don't know if anything stuck out today, but I do know the first time I flew out to California for a fan event.
Right.
My best friend, you know, she's a lady, and we know ladies aren't typically fans of the big three.
Typically not.
There are obviously female fans, but they're a smaller percentage.
Right.
So I was trying to explain to her what I was doing, and I was like, "Oh, well, I'm flying out." And she's like, "Do you even know these people?" And I'm like, "Well, I know them from Facebook."
Oh, that's
and she's like,
assuring.
"What do you talk to these people about?" And all I could think of to say was our personal lives and pop culture. But it was so funny to me that I couldn't even spit out the words. I was just like choking and like trying to say it, but I couldn't. And she's like, "Oh my God, you've gotten so weird." And it was just like one of those things like, yeah, I kind of have. And like there's certain words, like one time at work, I said the word squoze, which, you know, is not proper English.
Right.
I know that. I should not be saying it at work.
Right.
But it just slipped out of my mouth because I'm so used to being in my little big three world. Or when I found out my boss had a pool, I instantly said, "We should have a pool party," which is not what you should say to your boss. Like, and if I step back and think about it, I know it, but it's just so automatic to say these phrases, because if I was online, everyone would laugh. But then I'm in the real world, and I'm like, oh, now my boss just thinks I'm a weirdo.
Just thinks you're a pool party fanatic.
Yeah.
I use "what did I do" probably 10 times a day at work, just because it's a good one. You know, it reflects it off you. "None of your business" is one of my favorite ones, too. I don't know, but like when I don't really look for them, but like they just kind of like come to you like in normal life. I think maybe like the most famous one, "Come Like an Orgasm." Do you think that was a real Perry line, or do you think he hacked it from some other comedian, which he normally does?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know who would be lame enough to steal it from him. So, like, I'd like to think that it was all Perry, but we know that Perry is so lazy that he normally doesn't come up with things for himself.
No, he does not. So, speaking of Perry, the 25 or 7722 the Windy Anniversary SummerSlam weekend is kicking off tonight. I'm not there. You're not there. You've been. So, what do you think? You think this is going to be like a big moment for the big three? Like,
I do. I've heard some things that they are planning to do.
Right.
That sound epic to me. Things that, even though, I've met the big three, I've been fortunate enough to go to several fan events.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that would blow me away if they happen.
Wow.
So,
do you care to tease? Care to tease like one of those things, or is it all? Is it none of our business? Because if it's none of our business, that's okay.
I mean, a lot of it's none of our business.
All right, that's all right.
I hesitate to say anything just because I was hearing rumors in the planning stages, so I don't know exactly.
Well, you know what? It's none of our business, and we'll move on. But everyone seems really pumped. Like, there's a whole bus tour. Like, that to me sounds like the funnest thing of all. Like, the bus tour, like, people throwing stuff at Perry at the back of the bus, or going around to all the, the big-time places in Reseda.
I know that there were 2 celebrities on the guest list for the pool party.
Ooh.
So I think people are going to have fun hanging out with those 2.
Okay. Is it a celebrity that's been involved in the past with the big three?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, both of them have.
Nice.
And both of them are like not celebrities in the big three world. They're celebrities where if you told, your mom or dad or cousin who doesn't know about the big three, like, oh, so-and-so was at this party, they would know who it was.
All right. Now, I'm going to deviate from the path a little bit. Like, so is the real reason the big three isn't gigantic? It's got to be Perry, right?
I would say Perry's a solid 90%.
It's got to be him, because no one wants to work with that guy. I mean, he quits every other day. He sued people. He sued Jimmy Kimmel, who's maybe one of the top, 25 people in show business, like, all together, who could have been the gravy. Because I've listened to other, like, podcasts where they were going to have, like, Windy City Heat sequels where they were, like, cowboys and where they went into space or whatever. And I'm sure those would have been hilarious. But, I mean, that's the, the tragedy and the humor of the big three. It's Perry.
It is. And, people were willing to work through a lot of Perry's issues, such as not being dependable, having lots of demands. But definitely the lawsuit aspect made it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because, people are willing to be inconvenienced, but people don't want to be sued.
Right.
So I think out of all the mistakes that Perry has made, the lawsuit was probably the biggest.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, and it was Jimmy Kimmel, too, who was just about... I mean, he was in the beginnings of his ABC, like, nightly show. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't be dragged through the mud, so I don't, like, blame him for paying him off, but... it sucks. It sucks to think of what could have been, because they had the VPN show, which I thought was hilarious. And I don't know if that was just a VPN problem or a big three problem. Do you have any insight as to why that didn't take off?
I think as a fan, sometimes those shows look very simple, but like they're actually very complicated to produce, just getting everyone's schedule together.
Right.
Seeing like Don and Mole are so successful. It really is hard for them to negotiate their schedules. So doing that with someone who's as ungrateful as Perry,
Right.
when Perry's the person who's actually getting all the reward from your hard work, is just a tall task for anyone to do.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it was just logistics, not so much,
Right.
any problems with the show, just that it's so difficult to produce one episode. Like, I know a tiny bit about the work that goes in, and they make it seem easy and seamless when you listen to it, but there's a lot more that goes into the production.
It didn't seem like they got a lot of respect from VPN. I mean, because you would watch these, you can still watch these shows on YouTube. If you big 3 VPN, you can watch these shows. And there's a lot of like talking going on in the background in the beginning of their shows and stuff. It didn't seem like they got the respect they deserved, but they're classics. They're gems. I love them.
They are.
They're absolutely amazing. And another wet dream I have is they will release the tapes of all the podcasts, because they recorded all the podcasts. They have tapes of them. I don't know when probably when Perry's dead, so they don't have to pay him off. But I will pay top dollar just to see those. So we've talked about, the let me get this hashtag right, the 25 or 7722, the Windy Anniversary SummerSlam weekend. So what's Don like in person?
Don is really incredible to all the fans. I have never seen him interact with any fan that he did not treat like a VIP person. Every single fan, he wants to make sure you're having a good time, that you're included with the group, that you're finding it funny. Between him and Mary Jane, the work that they put into the podcast and the fan events is really amazing.
Right.
They are so incredibly gracious to everyone and so generous with their time. Like Don wants you to have a good time. He's concerned sincerely if you're having fun, if he's entertaining you,
That's
if
awesome.
he's doing everything that he can.
Yeah.
And I will say, even though my heart belongs to Mole, Don is very handsome and charming in person, and the ladies love him.
Yeah, and he's got a big cock. I'm sure that doesn't hurt. But I'm glad you brought up Mary Jane.
Everyone loves that.
I'm glad you brought up Mary Jane, because I was very confused when I was listening to the podcast. Like, the Mary Jane, hello. I was like, who is this? But she is obviously one of the most dedicated people to the podcast, being there for every single podcast, keeping Perry in line, doing this, doing that. So, for people who want to get involved with the podcast, if you were to describe Mary Jane behind the scenes, what would you have to say about her?
She is incredibly beautiful, not only on the outside, but also on the inside.
She's a model.
She is sweet, she is kind, she is beautiful, she is gracious. She is everything that you would want a lady to be.
She is a lady. So we talked about Dom, talked about Mary Jane. What about Mole? He seems like the most fun guy to hang out with.
Mole is great. He's a lot of fun. Everyone, with the exception of Perry, who I've met through the Big 3 world,
right,
has been incredibly wonderful to hang out with and incredibly generous and gracious.
Yeah, and he smokes banana doobies with anybody who wants one.
Yeah. I mean, it's a generous group, and they definitely pass around the doobies.
Right. So we'll wrap this up. I got a few more questions for you. I know you got to go, but we need to finish the people in person. Perry F. Caravello, what is he like face-to-face, facial friend?
Oh.
Does he really stink? Like, people say he stinks. Like, honestly, does he stink?
He doesn't smell good. I mean,
he uses olive oil as cologne, right?
He's got a very weird presence where I kind of keep my distance from him because he really is a little creepy in person. Like, there was one time after one of the live shows that he went to hug me, and I pushed him away. And his publicist, Tom Brennan, was standing there.
Shout out.
And Tom was like, "Why'd you do that? Like, you could be nice. You could give Perry a hug." So I was like, "Okay, I'll give Perry a hug." And I hugged him. And then immediately after that, he tried to kiss me.
Oh, my God.
And my hand shot up in between our faces. And I screamed, "No." And it wasn't even like a bit or me trying to be funny. It was just like a reflex. Like, "Oh, my God, do not touch me. Like, do not do that."
You weren't even get SAG vouchers from that. So there was no reason for the kiss to go through.
Yeah. Like, so it's just, he's definitely that sort of guy to, like, women. If you give him an inch, he's going to try to take a mile. Like, he's the type of guy who's going to hit on your girlfriend right in front of you.
Yeah, and that's been very cataloged through all the podcasts. You've been very gracious with your time. I have one last question.
Sure.
So what's next for the Big Three? Like, what do you hope the Big Three becomes? Like, do you want it to be a little niche kind of thing that you can just, have in your pocket? Or do you want it to be like a big time, thing for everybody to see?
I wish there were enough awesome people in the world to get the comedy of the Big Three.
Yes.
So I wish our world wasn't full of social justice warriors and people whose feelings get too hurt so easily, and more people to appreciate the comedy.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's the direction just the world in general is headed towards.
Yeah.
But I think the people who see the magic of the comedy, see the art to it, appreciate it so much that I don't really know if the Big Three will become like a worldwide phenom.
Mm-hmm.
Don and Mole definitely have the talent to have that sort of fame.
Right, yes.
I just kind of don't know if the world is ready for it.
They're not. I mean, especially the whole, like, JQA in himself is probably not mainstream comedy.
Yeah.
Especially with the Tom Brennan situation, he is not mainstream comedy, but... the thing about the Big Three is, like, you can take off your shoes, you can, like, just relax, and, like, you're in just, an ocean of everything is comedy, everything is fun, you don't have to worry about, that's what I love about it the most. Like, there's no rules, there's no, proclivities as to what's right, what's wrong. It to me, it's the funniest thing in the world, and I thank you kindly for your loving and warming and invitation into the Big Three fan club. Susie, I could talk Big Three all night, but I know you gotta go. And if you want to do this again, the offer is absolutely on the table.
Yeah, I had a great time talking to you, and any fans of your show who want to become my Facebook friend and want an invite into this magical little fan club that we've talked about. I have no standards, so I'll be your Facebook friend.
She has no standards. She is Susie Hilf. It is an invite-only group, so you can get in contact. And we do have
rules that once in a while I have to, be everyone's mom and enforce. Right. But for the most part, we're pretty easygoing.
Got it. So you can contact me. I'm Garrett W. Savage on Twitter and Instagram. My Facebook is Garrett Savage. Susie, do you have any other social media you would want people to reach out to you? You don't have to if you don't want to, but...
Yeah, all my social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is all under Susie Hilf. So that's Susie, Susie, and Hilf is like MILF, but with an H.
Whoa.
So.
You worked on that one, I bet.
No, it's just unfortunate birth name.
Well, Susie, this was amazing. I love talking Big Three. I hope we can do it again. This is episode number 14. Everybody go to YouTube, Winnie Sydney Heat. It's on there. Watch it. Go to Simply Don, the podcast network, and you can listen to every single episode of the Big Three podcast, plus Simply Don, the podcast, which has the Big Three on some of those episodes. Susie, this was amazing. I thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Garrett.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. I'll do anything to be an actor, anything to be a star. A star more than an actor. A star. I'll do anything to be a star.
Hi.
Yeah,